But it was a wild time. I was 14 so I lost my parents, moved high schools, and was also awakening to being gay, you know.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so there was definitely a lot happening
Yeah.
in at that time in life. And honestly, I mean, the way I see this as a great gift in my life because I can't say that I was conscious about any of my choices back then, but something in me knew to just lock away the parents' death for a bunch of years. I just
Mhm.
buried it, was a straight A student, popular kid, had a great high school experience, would have a good cry once a year. It was almost like clockwork and often precipitated by getting drunk, and
Mhm.
then would sob and sob and sob and then lock it away again and just go on with my life. And
Wow.
it wasn't until my early 20s that sobbing, that 1 year sobbing thing wasn't stopping. It was going on for a few days. I was in San Francisco at the time. I moved to San Francisco after college,
Mhm.
and was playing Kate Bush on repeat and just crying, crying, crying. And I opened the Yellow Pages, if you remember the Yellow Pages, the
Oh yeah.
phone book,
Mhm.
and it literally opened to the psychotherapist section, whatever it was called,
Wow.
and closed my eyes and pointed my finger and called that woman. And that has been my one experience with therapy. It was 6 weeks. That's all I could afford at the time.
Mhm.
And I think what it allowed me to see, I think there was a part of me, I thought I had a mental break. I mean, I was
Yeah.
crying nonstop for days, which
Right.
hadn't happened, and except for when my parents died in those months after.
Right.
And I think it allowed me to see that, what, I actually could be with the pain of this. And I could, instead of locking it away, I could actually allow myself to feel not only the sadness, but the rage and the confusion and the blame that I had for my father and all of it, and that I would survive it.
Yeah.
Like I can feel my feelings and it will be okay. And it helped me to feel, those 6 weeks helped me to ground and, yes, shifted something in me for sure.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite the journey to go on. And do you see it now as something that is a an event that led you in any way to doing the work that being so in your heart and doing the type of work that you do now? Um, do you see it as a catalyst?
I honestly don't know.
Mhm.
It's like I could reflect on it through that lens and say, "Oh yeah, of course this led
Mhm.
to this and this led to this." But I can't say with all certainty that had that not happened, I wouldn't have gone down a similar path.
Yeah. Right.
Like you, I was a really open-hearted kid when my parents were alive. I had a lot of compassion as a kid. Like I look at the young version of myself and see this like huge heart.
Mhm.
So I could have landed in the heart centered, like, let's talk about love space. But certainly, I feel like everything leads to every next thing. So everything I've experienced in my life has led me to where I am now,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. Right.
if that makes sense.
Well, I'm curious. I know in the book you talk about a love activist, and you know, obviously everyone has some amount. I think even the darkest people on the planet, there's
Yeah.
love in there somewhere. But what is a love activist, and why is it a title that
I
you've
mean,
taken
yeah,
on?
I was always, Brandon, when people would ask me, what do you do? I could never, I would, especially in the last years when what I do is like, well, I give workshops on
Hmm.
love and facing fears, or I would always stutter through some response of
Yeah.
what I did.
Right.
And then this woman I really admire, Glennon Doyle, who's this wonderful writer and activist and philanthropist. She blurbed my first book and referred to me in that way, and I'd never really heard those words together as love activist, and I thought that's actually a title that makes sense to me, because for
Yeah.
me what that means is I'm someone who just makes a lot of noise for the power of love in our lives. So that, I feel like, is an umbrella term. And then however I go about doing that is however I go about doing that.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I in my book I wrote I did a John Lennon quote mashup remix, as I put it, and it's sort of my favorite quote at this point. Like, love is the answer now. What was the question? It's like literally as
Love that.
cliche as it is, like, okay, what are we faced with? What's in front of me?
Yep.
Okay, how can I bring the most loving energy to it? And certainly easier said than done oftentimes. As Mike Tyson always said, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And life tends to do that.
Exactly.
But yeah, I fully agree. It's cliche and true. It's like it is the answer to everything.
Yeah. You know what I notice time and again is when I it happens in for me it less so, but still with around the world of politics and world events. These are the types of things that can get me off center and where I get out of alignment with love or can and want to go to this place of judgment and want to go to this place of shame and and every time I do it or I'm compelled to do it, I usually don't act with it in the way that I write or speak out in the world, but
Mm-hmm.
still, every time I feel out of balance in my being, like every time I'm in my heart, the mandate is always the exact same thing. It's just love.
Mm-hmm.
Even that person, just love,
Mm-hmm.
but just love. And
Yeah.
so when I bring myself to that place, I feel most at home in my body, most at home in my being, most aligned with source. Like everything comes home
Yeah.
there. So yeah, it's cliche, but there's nothing that feels more true to me than
Yeah.
that personally.
And, the results, I always say with these different approaches of how to deal with things, results speak the loudest. And anytime you get into your heart, it is such a powerful way to shift whatever stubborn energy is present.
Yeah,
And if you have someone who's angry or someone, it's hard to be, try being really mad with someone who's being loving to you. It's not easy to do.
exactly.
It's
At all.
extremely powerful.
It is extremely powerful and it's often difficult. It's easy to choose rage or hatred or judgment or whatever else we're all choosing at times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it can take extra effort and intention to like say no.
Yeah.
What is love inviting in this moment? How
Yep.
is love asking me to respond right now?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.